you talked about safe versus resilient. And I saw a quote recently, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm so sorry. And it was something to it was like an Instagram post as I was death scrolling. And it said something like, you cannot be safe and comfortable and expect to have an epic story, right? Like, or an epic journey. And so you kind of, talking about the muck, Tammy, that you were bringing up before, like being in the muck and kind of that, right? And Tomaso, sort of that, practically every day is like an NDE experience, right? You're kind of on the edge of like life. To me, like, it makes a lot of sense. I remember, just speaking purely from a line 3, I felt very sort of sheltered and very confined. And I don't mean like my mom locked me in the house or anything, but my life was too safe. And I found that gave me a lot of angst. And so I found, it doesn't sound so dramatic now, but like at the time, I went from this predictable, went to school, graduated, got some sort of starter job. And I was just like, no, like, I don't want to live my life with this pattern anymore. I don't want to feel like I've made choices out of fear, right? I don't want to feel like I've lived in this city and stayed in the city that I grew up in out of fear of exploring somewhere else, stick in this like very narrow career path because I, didn't want to step out or had this fear about stepping out. So I did something which felt at the time totally out of character, which was I went to work on cruise ships. And it was like the first time I'd used a passport. And it was the first time I had like flown outside of, North America. And it was freaking the crap out of me. And yet it was one of the most absolutely magical and brilliant experiences, and made me realize a lot of the fear that I had about doing anything was just from a lack of experience, right? Just from a lack of kind of really taking action, right? Moving into that. So back to that line 3 sort of experimentation and going into that. And then I had people saying, oh, I live vicariously through you because your life is such an adventure. That was what I was getting for a while. So were people telling you when you were, I'm just kind of directing that to all the panelists. I'll jump to you, Tomas. Were people telling you like your life is such an adventure when they would look at you in your line 1 phase and kind of just be like, I'm learning from you just by watching you? Because maybe some people might have not felt comfortable doing it themselves, but maybe look to you to do the experimentation and kind of tell them about it.
Yes, so it was both. It was a mix of like, what are you about? Because like, there's so much, like, I don't know what is your essence, and like trying to like squeeze me into a box that I am not. But also, it was from very early, like my early 20s, that I got that feedback. Also, I imagine I was on a business network meeting, and then there was someone, and I talked with him, and he was looking for a coach, and he asked, what does qualify you? And I could tell him, like, probably this is what you're struggling with in life. And he asked, okay, what is 1 day of VIP coaching? And like, should I take 2 half days because I will be flying here? Right. So they would recognize the depth of my experience, but also it was like, you're too much, or like, they were not saying it, but this is what I was getting. So I was shaking up their like small perspective on life. And I know this is also what I bring with my design. Like I think it's something of transitoriness, or like I'm all about transformation. So when people come into my field, they change if they like it or not. And who doesn't like it to be influenced or like to be like shaken up should better stay away. So this also blends in the mix probably. Yeah.
And that's a good point, because I know sometimes I had this as well. And once again, back to sort of a little bit of the sheltered stuff for a while, but I just remember I actually, held myself back when I was younger, assuming, oh, I'm too young for this. I'm too young for that. People won't take me seriously. Right? Like all these excuses in my head. And yet you know, if I look back and I were to have opened myself up to experimentation a little bit more, which feels kind of fun and cool. Like I said, when there's no attachment to, you know, whatever's going on except for the experience and the learning from it, you know, and I would have realized now I'm wiser looking back thinking age has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Right. So you talk about all your adventures, right? When you were, in your first phase, Kathy talks about her adventures. Tammy talks about her adventures. That kind of experience represents, like you said, a couple of lifetimes, right? There's so much more knowledge and so much more wisdom and so much more that comes from that, as opposed to, so for example, what I'm trying to say is, as a 23-year-old, you might have more living than somebody who's, you know, 35, 36, 40, right?
Yeah.
Just because of that phase and that experience. So did you find that people either dismissed you because they thought you were young despite the experience, or like, did you have that experience at all? Or did people just say, oh my God, you have so much experience? Tomaso, I'll do you first and then I'll jump to Tammy.
When I was listening to myself and aware of who I am and the truth of that, right? The body of truth, I could say, that what I embody, then people would recognize it. If I was like, I don't know, they would reflect that. And for example, one thing is, once a musician came to one of my workshops that I just started doing, and then they filled up by themselves. And then 2 weeks later, like, because we somehow met, I would have nearly shared the stage with him in a refugee camp. And he worked with musicians like Lady Gaga and stuff. So this kind of name he had. And it was just supernatural for me. Like, I didn't doubt it. It was always, and this is where I always connect from, just from the heart. So I was never interested in like, what's his authority or whatnot. I just felt like I should meet this person, or there is a sense of like, that, right? Yeah, interest, or like, yeah, we should meet, we should connect. And when I was following my authority, also my authority in terms of, I know who I am and I know this impulse is true, then magic would just happen. And I would meet all these amazing people that were a lot of times much further along the way or much higher positions, or had like, for example, the self-made billionaire I'm just getting into business with, right? They're just coming to me. So it was mostly about like me trusting myself and saying, yes, I have this experience. Yes, I earned this, right? It wasn't easy. It was really some crazy experiences, and also emotionally deep, especially. I've earned this. This is who I am. And some kind of not false pride, but some like natural pride, natural authority. So not arrogant, but like just staying true to myself. Like, this is who I am. This is what I've experienced. This is what I can share with others as a gift. Like, hey, I know when you go this way, I know what's going to happen probably because of principles, not because of like, yeah, some story or whatever. Right. So this, yeah, this is it.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Tammy, you wanted to share.
I did. So I'm 44, but I look quite young. I don't look my age, but I've always felt older than I actually am. I am an old, so I have been here many, many, many times. I'm a very old soul. In fact, when I went on the roof, I worked in long-term care, taking care of my masters, right? Taking care of my elders, because I just always had this resonance of being old. Now, moving into my second line unconsciously, I was just naturally good at a lot of things. And I was just naturally, I mean, my incarnation cross is literally about leadership. I was naturally a leader all the time. So I was naturally putting myself or invited or recognized in leadership roles, and had this sense of embodiment that made it true. So it wasn't me trying as much as me being, but when I was younger, there seemed to be a lot more trying than actually being. And now that I've come in, I'm a little bit older, I live an inspiring life. I have to say, this is not ego. I live a really inspiring life. And I can say that because I truly am being this. This is who I am. I get to be these things because I did the work. I truly believe in myself and have faith in myself. And this is how we attract. Right? We attract other people who see us, not see what we're doing, not seeing, oh, I wish I could be like that too. But instead of, you inspire me, and this is, to me, the role of the role model. And they, we talk about it just being, but there's a lot of work that has to be done to get to the just being, and to have that confidence, to have that courage, to have that embodiment, right? And the one thing I have to say about Six Lines is embodiment is a full-time journey. And even coming into this, I see where I ran away. I see where I wasn't fully embodied. I see where I didn't want to get into the messy middle of my emotions or my thoughts or my stories because they were painful. And so as a Six Line, there's this journey of coming into who you truly are. But there's an escapism of the Six Line that we haven't really addressed. And so I want to address that real quick. The escapism of the Six Line profile, when we would rather take the bird's eye view, be on the edge, look down, instead of actually acknowledging our ownness, embodying our own truths, because it's so much easier to be disembodied. And so this has been my journey in the last 2 years of deeply coming into being embodied, as opposed to being, Six Line judging a little bit or seeing the potential, but not really fully living it or feeling it, because we always want more. We always see more. We can always go higher, and judging where we are as truth, as opposed to I'm not good enough. And so how do you be a role model if you don't never feel like you're good enough?